2 o'clock. We clearly have a quorum, and we will begin our 37th annual meeting of the Academy of Honor with our invocation. Our invocation will be given by Wayne Flynt, a member of the First Baptist Church of Auburn.
Dear God, lest we grow despondent because we cannot realize as quickly as we would like the full possibilities of our wonderful state, grant us patience and help us to observe all those in this room who've accomplished so much toward that goal, who have pulled us, sometimes kicking and screaming, toward a better destiny than we have come from. Lest our egos become inflated by the honors we receive, remind us that there are many in this state as worthy as we are of such distinctions. Lest we trust too much in our leadership skills, help us remember that in the kingdom of God, we find ultimate meaning not in how well we lead, but in how faithfully we serve others. Lest we take comfort in our honors, power, wealth, and good fortune, turn our attention instead to the Magnificat of Mary, who sang, "He has scattered those who are proud in their inmost thoughts. He has brought down rulers from their thrones, but has lifted up the humble. He has filled the hungry with good things, but has sent the rich away empty." Amen.
Bob Riley became governor in 2003. He became a member of this organization upon his election. That is what our statute provides. He has been at this meeting to welcome us every time we've had a meeting since then. He's done that sometimes at great inconvenience, but we are honored, and I have a great pleasure in asking Governor Riley to welcome us.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
Going into the 7th year to welcome each one of you here. And for the first time, I find out now that it was optional. I always thought that when Tom Carruthers called and said, "You will be there and you'll be there at 2 o'clock, that I really didn't have an option. But this is something that I look forward to every year. You know, if you look back on the list of people that have been inducted, it really is indicative of our state. And to all of you that have been honored, I want to tell you how much I appreciate everything that you have done for the state of Alabama. Well, actually, if everyone who is a member, if you would please stand. Ladies and gentlemen, give them a round of applause, because what they are doing truly has made this the state that it is today. You know, Alabama's not just a land mass that sits between Georgia and Mississippi. Alabama is what it is today because of its people and what they believe. Alabama is what it is today, and we have changed so many of those old negative stereotypes. And today, I think Alabama is being recognized around the world as being really unique. But the uniqueness comes from each one of you. What makes us truly Alabamians is that coalition, that composite of ideologies, of philosophies that make us unique. When I looked at the 5 inductees today, I said, if you want to understand who Alabama truly is and what we truly represent, look at those 5 individuals. And if you look at what they've accomplished for this state and how much they've helped move it forward, then I think everyone in this room would be glad to say that we're proud to make Alabama our home. Thank you very much.
We have some very distinguished people in this room. I'll just pick a few. Is Sue Bell Cobb here? She's trying a case. If you are on the wrong side, why, all right, good luck. Sue Bell is a wonderful person. Jim Folsom is represented by his lovely wife, Marcia. Marcia, stand. Attorney General Troy King, happy to have you here. Secretary of State Beth Chapman, thank you for being here. Our State Auditor Samantha Shaw. Ron Sparks, he'll be joining us later, our Commissioner of Agriculture. Seth Hammett. Seth Hammett stands. Demetrius Newton. Pleasure to have you here. We had to pass an amendment to the code. I think we started 3 years ago, and we wouldn't have accomplished that had we not had Demetrius Newton and Seth Hammett and others in this room. Bill Newton, our finance director. Is Bill here? Yeah, 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock. Okay. McDowell Lee, the Secretary of the Senate. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Greg Pappas. This room belongs to Greg, except when McDowell says something. I want to read to you the members in attendance. If I have left anyone out, please let me know. And I suggest that when I call your name, you either stand or raise your hand or say something. Gail Andrews. Where is Gail? This is going to be short, but on Gail, Gail is in charge of a superb exhibit in Birmingham at the Birmingham Museum of Art. It is an exhibit of great pieces from New Haven, lent to us, about young America. And that'll be a nice segue until one of the last people on this list. I urge you to see it. Thank you, Gail. Leah Rawls Atkins. Where's Leah? Leah, thank you. Tom Bartlett. Tom took the long way here from Portland, Oregon, and from here he leaves for the Near East. Ann Bedsoe. Tom Bradford. Tom. Albert Brewer. Ed Bridges. Harry Brock. David Bronner. Mason Davis. Oliver Delchamps. Jack Edwards. Wayne Flynt. Michael Goodrich. Miller Gorey. Fred Gray. Elmer Harris. Jimmy Harrison. The next one is our inestimable Solon, Tomorrow he will celebrate his 105th birthday, Jim Head. Sandrell Hewlett, Ted Kennedy, Harper Lee, David Matthews, Scotty McCallum, John McKinley, John McMahon, James Pittman, Kathy Randall, Governor Riley, Yetta Samford, Herb Sklenar, Bill Smith, Lee Steislinger, Joab Thomas, Paul Thompson, Cameron Vowell, Jack Warner. Jack also has a museum and a collection, and I would be shot if I didn't mention it with what Gail is doing in Birmingham, 2 great art shows. Catherine Tucker Wendell. Now, last year, Catherine, I asked you a question, and you took great offense. Is that correct? Yeah. All right. I had some more questions, but no more. Cordell Wynn. This is the largest number of members we've ever had at our meeting, and we're happy to have this many. We hope to have even more next year. Yes? Mike Warren, excuse me, come, stand up. I have a question. Directed to Catherine. 5 of our members have left us this past year. Tom Courts. Tom Courts was the truly great president of Sanford. He was there more than 20 years and did a superb job in elevating it in every way. He then embarked on changing the Alabama Constitution. He then became head of the 2-year system. He then went on to Washington for further service. A truly great man. Ken Daniel. Ken Daniel was head of a SIPCO for 15 years. He was one of the strong business leaders, not only in Birmingham, but in the state. He was on all of the decision-making boards, private and public. Guy Hunt. Is Mrs. Hunt here? Where is Mrs. Hunt? Would you stand? Ann, we're happy to have you here. Your husband was a great man, a great leader. He, in many respects, revolutionized the way the political arena is here, and you were a great partner to him. You have some guests here, I think. I don't want you to introduce them. All right, will you ask them to stand? thank all of you very much. Bill Ireland. Is John here? John. Bill Ireland, you know better than most of us, a delightful man to be with. I'm sure he was a wonderful father. He was in the great Ireland family. He was with Vulcan Materials Company. He did many things in the environmental area. He had a collection of wooden ducks that were his pride. We will miss him very much. Jimmy Lee. Jimmy Lee was the CEO of Buffalo Rock, whose prize was Pepsi Cola. If you had a party in Birmingham and you had Coca-Colas on the table and you heard Jimmy Lee was arriving, you made a quick change. We're happy to have all of you here. Thank you very much. We have a special honor. David Matthews is a member, has been a member for many years, but has been unable to attend our meetings. And we have asked that he be presented by Kathy Randall, a member of our executive committee.
An old Hindustani proverb says, there is nothing noble in being superior to someone else. Nobility comes from being superior to your former self. As an educator and public policy leader, David Matthews' life has been dedicated to ennobling others, inspiring and empowering them to strive to become superior to their former selves. This noble man served as Secretary of the United States Department of Health, Education, and Welfare during the administration of President Gerald R. Ford. While at HEW, he worked on restoring public confidence in government and in reforming the regulatory system. At his swearing in as Secretary of HEW, President Ford said, "Matthews brings to this new mission the strength of youth, a sense of purpose, the skills of a scholar, and the trusted record of a successful leader and administrator." That is an impressive inventory by any standard. Matthews was born and grew up in Grove Hill, Alabama. He earned his bachelor's degree in history and classical Greek from the University of Alabama and his PhD in history from Columbia University. At age 33, he was chosen to become the University of Alabama's youngest president. Matthews currently serves as president and chief executive officer of the Kettering Foundation, a not-for-profit organization that recognizes that problems like world hunger are not so much technical problems as they are political problems. In the 70s, the foundation began to concentrate on democratic politics, particularly the role of citizens. And they hired Dr. Matthews in 1981 to lead that initiative by becoming president of the Kettering Foundation. Dr. Matthews is the recipient of 16 honorary degrees, serves on too many boards to mention, and has written extensively on such subjects as education, public policy, and international problem solving. In 2007, the Alabama Center for Civic Life was renamed the David Matthews Center for Civic Life. Not the least of his contributions to this state has been the pivotal role he has played in the careers of so many great Alabama leaders, such as Academy of Honor members Joab Thomas and Neil Birdie and Roger Sayers and Mac Patera, and the list goes on and on. Dr. Matthews, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for ennobling this occasion by bringing greetings on behalf of the current members of the Alabama Academy of Honor.
The only problem with having to make a speech after a Kathy Randall introduction is that the speech pales in comparison. I was given a very difficult assignment. I was asked to speak on behalf of the present members to the incoming class. It threw me off stride. Frankly, what I'm prone to do is take speaking engagement and just talk about whatever I'm working on, a book I'm writing or something, and it's easy. But to represent all of you was a problem, because you're living and you're in the audience, and you very well may say that what I've said doesn't represent you in the least. So I took the coward's way out. I turned to history, and I asked myself what history had to say about honor, what lessons it might afford us. First person who came to my mind was Jabez Lamar Clayton Monroe Curry. Has so many first names, it's kind of difficult to get all the way through them. He was a member of this house at one time. He served in the Confederate Army with great distinction. And he was at one time the Alabamian chosen to represent us in the Statuary Hall of Congress. He has since been removed, I understand, to be placed by certainly an unquestionable good choice, Helen Keller. But I don't know what became of Jabez Lamar Monroe Curry. Ed, do you have him? Is Ed Bridges? He's going to Samford, where he was president at one time. Well, his career and present condition illustrates a great principle of history I learned from a cab driver in Atlanta. Shortly after Jimmy Carter had left the presidency and retired, I was in the Atlanta airport, picked up a cab going somewhere, and I asked the cab driver how President Carter was doing. He said, well, you know, he said, yesterday's peacock is today's feather duster. I think that was too cynical. And I think the real lesson from history is that true accomplishment is not the same as recognition. Curry was arguably the best educator that the South produced in the latter part of the 19th century. Great advocate of education for all Southerners, black and white. And much of what we have today in regional compacts, the Southern Regional Education Board, all of those stem from the work of this fine Alabamian. Recognition comes and goes, but real contributions stand, and his real contributions stand. The other thing that I think history is good at is that it recognizes people who are pioneers, whose work was not important when they lived, wasn't important for decades thereafter, but history marches on, we understand their true significance, people who opened the way. Now, if there had been an Academy of Honor back in the turn of the 19th century, when we're moving into the 20th, we would have had Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver. But the person we should have elected was Lucy Skipwith. Your blank stares confirm my suspicions. You never heard of Lucy Skipwith, except for Mason Davis. I made the mistake of trying out my experiment on Mason. He knew Lucy Skipwith. In fact, he knows where her people live today, in the Birmingham area. Now, here's the story. In the early 1800s, in Virginia, there was a sense, and Thomas Jefferson was part of this, that slavery was eventually going to do us in and that we had to get rid of this before it doomed us. And so the only way some people could think of ending it was to move folks back to Africa. And a plantation owner there named Cook freed one of his slaves, a Peyton Skipwith, and he sent him to Liberia. And then he got the brother of Peyton Skipwith, George, to become the leader of a group of slaves that were going just outside of Greensboro to a plantation he called Hopewell. And he struck a deal with them. He was no wild-eyed idealist. He was a good, hard businessman. And he said, if you can earn back what I paid for you as slaves, then I'll let the profits of the plantation repay you. And when I'm repaid, then you can go to Liberia and join Peyton and the other people who've immigrated back to their homeland. They worked hard, and Lucy Skipwith, who was George's daughter, opened, as far as I can tell, one of the first schools for African Americans. They were slaves, it wasn't supposed to be, but she was a very determined woman, and so she wrote Cook, who was the plantation owner, a whole string of letters describing the school that she opened for the children on the plantation. This was against the law, it was against custom, but she was assisted by one of the local ministers, I think a Methodist minister who taught mathematics, and she paved the way. She paved the way for Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, and all the people. History's good at recognizing that people that open paths, unacknowledged in their lifetime, prove to be the pathfinders of our history. The third lesson I learned from this little excursion into history is that the popular image of a person, stereotype, if you will, is often reduced by the glare of history, and we understand the true significance of a person. Gerald Ford, who was the most athletic president we ever had, was stereotyped as a stumbling, bumbling kind of, he fell off an airplane or hit somebody with a golf ball or something like that. So his stereotype was one thing and the reality was another. That may be the case with a former governor, Thomas Good Jones. Confederate soldier, fought with Stonewall Jackson. I'm told was given the honor of carrying one of the 4 flags of surrender at Appomattox. He was a avid states' rights politician who came back. He was a, quote, bourbon Democrat, which did not distinguish one group of Democrats from another, but as you know, referred to those who were more associated with the plantation class and the wealthy. He fit the stereotype of the conservative, prejudiced Southerner. But recent scholarship, in fact, I don't think the book has been published yet. There's a history professor, West Alabama, Rob Reiser, who has uncovered this most amazing story about Thomas Goode Jones and Oliver Wendell Holmes. Oliver Wendell Holmes was in history the very opposite of Thomas Goode Jones. He was from Massachusetts. He was an early abolitionist. He fought in the Union Army. He was a Supreme Court justice. He was an advocate of freedom of expression, the very soul of liberalism. But in this very town, in fact, not far from here, Jones, after he left the governor's office, was appointed a federal judge by Teddy Roosevelt. They were not of the same party. Roosevelt was a Republican. If you check the pages and look, Booker T. Washington was a good friend of Roosevelt's, and Booker T. Washington secured the federal appointment for Thomas Goode Jones. Time went on. 1901 Constitution was in effect. Jones had advocated it. He was a member of the 1901 convention. But there was a man working in the federal building named Giles. And Giles was black, but he decided he wanted to vote. He passed all of the requirements. He paid his poll tax. He had a job. All of the barriers that were put up, he'd leap them, but he didn't get to vote. So he brought the case in, wound up in Thomas Goode Jones's court. There was never any correspondence that anybody can find between Booker T. Washington and Jones. Well, that would have been improper. But Washington was instrumental in securing a New York lawyer, Smith, I think his name was. And they tried the case. And it had a most unusual outcome because Jones dismissed all except the jurisdictional issues in the case and made it possible for that case to skip the appeals court and go directly to the Supreme Court, where waiting like an outstretched receiver, waiting for the pass, was surely the great liberal of the day, Oliver Wendell Holmes. And so the case that would have early on reversed the discriminatory effects of the 1901 Constitution passed artfully through Thomas Goode Jones's court on the way to Oliver Wendell Holmes, and Oliver Wendell Holmes turned him down. So, the stereotypes that develop about us do not necessarily conform to the facts, and sometimes it takes a good deal of history to dig that out. As I progressed through my examination of Alabama history, I came upon the list of the members, deceased members of this honorable body. I asked myself what lessons we could draw. These were people who had sterling records of accomplishment. But I knew some of them, and I began to think about what I knew about them. Shug Jordan. My father died going through his papers. There was a photograph of Shug Jordan, my father, and my father's cousin, A.L. Payne. And the note written in the 70s was, "The boys from Clark County did all right. It was a picture of the Auburn baseball team. My father was Shug's roommate. Shug, Selma claims him, but actually he's from Watley, Alabama, just a stone throw from Grove Hill. Grew up there. I think his daddy was in the railroad. He couldn't make it across the river to Monroe. He had to stay there. And they all went together to the schools of Clark County High School and made their way to Auburn. But now it was 1972. Shug had an incredible record. I found by reading it, he was also the basketball coach. Did you know that? Had a great record as the Auburn basketball coach before he became the football coach. I didn't remember his record, though. I had to look that up. What I remembered was that note to my father, years away, remembrance. And I suddenly realized that what lives on, what we do that lives on is not in the record book. What lives on is the influence that we have on other people. And that passes on from generation to generation. Tell you another story. This is a Frank Johnson story, who inherited the judgeship that Thomas Good Jones had. Frank Johnson loved to fish, get away and go down, and he was a good friend of Warren Burger's. And we would go fishing down off the Alabama coast, down around Destin. And the judge had a boat, Chief Justice and I, and Floyd Mann. This particular trip, the seas were rough. I mean, the waves were really tough. And there's a little slip through the pass that you move out, and we're going through, and the boat is going up and down, and Floyd did not care much for the motion, and he's kind of hunkered down, and we look around to see where our pilot was, and there was nobody in the boathouse. And we thought, my, this man of judicial integrity and great political courage has been overwhelmed by the sea, and what should we do? We've got the Chief Justice there, throw out the lifeboats, go try to navigate through the currents ourselves. And then finally we looked up, and there at the very top of the boat we realized there was another steering wheel, and there was Judge Johnson steering us through. So when I think about him, I don't think about his record, whether you agree with it or disagree with it. I think about that act of personal courage, and that's what lives with me. It's the same A.G. Gaston. Mr. A.G. Gaston, I guess, was the wealthiest black businessman Alabama had until recent history. I was on the Miles College board. We were going to ask him for a gift. We had six figures at least, that danced in our head. We walked in, he greeted us as courteously as ever. He said, "Fellas, I know what you're here for. Don't you worry, I've already written out a check for $1,000. We realized then why Mr. A.G. was so rich. He didn't give his money away. But what he illustrated, those who knew him personally, was his generosity. I mean, this was a man who was born down in Demopolis, drove past the university every day going to Birmingham. He couldn't attend. But later he became a great supporter of that and many good causes. He could have been bitter, he could have been antagonistic. He was not. He was generous. And that generosity and a check for $1,000 made an impression on me. And then finally, I'll close with the Honorable Judge C.J. Coley and what I remember about him. You all know him. Banker, probate judge in his county. And he was fond of saying this. He said, if you're in my county and you get arrested and they throw you in jail, he said, I can't get you out. But what I'll do, he says, is I'll come visit you. Friendship. What counts in the long haul is not the record we leave, but the lives we influence. So to the new inductees to the Hall of Fame, we say congratulations, welcome to our company, and thanks, because your record, what you've done, makes us all look good. Thank you.
We have today, to help give the citations, Mason Davis, who follows Judge Coley with the intervention of Bo Tarbert. Mason Davis is one of the outstanding lawyers of this state. He's been the president of the Birmingham Bar, the Birmingham Kiwanis, the largest in the world, and many, many other honors. Mason Davis will read the citations, and when he reads them, we will ask the inductee to come up. Mason, come on up.
Thank you very much. There's one thing I wanted to add to what you said. There's Demetrius Newton, who's from the legislature, and he also knows the Skipwith family. The first inductee is Angus Cooper II. For being born in Mobile and graduating from University Military School in 1960, for earning a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Alabama in 1964, after serving in the Coast Guard, joining the family business, Cooper Stevedoring, a company that his grandfather had founded some 60 years earlier, for leading the company's tremendous growth and positioning it completely international with some of the biggest maritime firms in the world, for serving as a director of numerous boards, among them Whitney National Bank of New Orleans, the National World War II Museum, the Coast Guard Foundation and Gulf Coast Conservation Association, and the University of Alabama and Red Elephant Club, for having served as a director of the Federal Reserve Bank, for being named a member of Who's Who in U.S. companies, Young Presidents Organization, Mobile Area Chamber of Commerce, Senior Bowl Committee, Mobile Arts and Sports Association, and Eastern Shore Arts Association, for having served as a director of Boy Scouts of America, Children's Hospital, and other civic organizations, for his outstanding leadership skills and vision that have brought numerous industry awards, one of the latest being the International Maritime Hall of Fame Award, for his long career of sterling achievements, his many contributions to this state, and his continued commitment to excellence in everything he pursues. Angus Cooper II, has been elected to the Alabama Academy of Honor.
Well, this reminds me of something a long time ago when I got an award and they told me I wasn't going to say anything. Today they told me that Charles McCrary was going to talk for everybody, so keep my mouth shut, but I will keep listening a minute. It's an honor to me to follow these leaders in the state of Alabama and to be honored here today. But my father, and who trusted my brother and I, and my brother who's been lockstep with me and signed every note that I've signed at the bank, and I owe you the world, David. I've had a lot of fun being with you and working this business all these years. And now that we have our boys and your son, and I wish Clan was still with us. She got married and left us. But it's quite an honor for me to be here today, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Donald M. James, for being born in Russellville, Alabama, and graduating from Russellville High School, for attending the University of Alabama, where he earned his BA and MBA degrees in 1971 and 1973, for serving as First Lieutenant and aide-de-camp to the Commanding General, U.S. Army Finance Center from 1972 to 1974, for receiving his Juris Doctor from the University of Virginia Law School in 1977, where he was executive editor of the Virginia Law Review and in the top 10% of his graduating class, for joining the law firm of Bradley, Arant, Rose and White as an associate, and for being named a partner in that prestigious firm in 1982. After a very successful career at Bradley Arant, accepting the position of Senior Vice President and General Counsel with Vulcan Materials Company in 1992, for serving in interim positions at Vulcan before assuming the duties of Chairman and Chief Executive Officer in 1997, the position he continues to hold, being an active and energetic leader within the industry, the community, and beyond, serving on numerous boards, including Vulcan Materials Company, Southern Company, Wells Fargo and Company, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Economic Development Partnership of Alabama, University of Alabama Health Services Foundation, UAB Health System, Children's Hospital, and Boy Scouts of America, to name just a few, for being the recipient of numerous awards and honors during his illustrious career, one of the most recent being the Woodrow Wilson Award for Corporate Citizenship, for his outstanding leadership, his remarkable achievements, and his deep sense of civic duty. Donald M. James has been elected to the Alabama Academy of Honor.
When I was in the first grade at Russellville Elementary School, my teacher checked the box and it said, "Followed directions well," so I'm going to sit down.
For being born in Boyles, Alabama, and if you don't know where Boyles is, it's to the northeast of Birmingham, just south of Tarrant City. The firstborn son of a school teacher and a railroad engineer, attending the public schools of Boyles, and for furthering his education at Massey Business College and Birmingham School of Law, for enlisting in the U.S. Army, rising to the rank of major, and serving in World War II under General George Patton, for helping to open the gate of the first concentration camp liberated by American forces, and for being instrumental in the cleanup and restoration of Austria. Upon his return home, establishing Martin Oil Company, and for his career as a respected businessman. for being elected president of Associated Industries of Alabama, that is now known as the Business Council of Alabama, for being elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 1964 and serving in the 89th Congress, for serving as the Commissioner of Alabama's Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, where, during his tenure, all of the state parks were renovated, for working with Alabama Power Company to establish a 15,000-acre wildlife management area, for his unrelenting efforts that finally resulted in the United States Supreme Court's allowing Alabama to restore the offshore boundary line for drilling oil, ultimately earning the state more than $1 billion, for initiating an audit of oil companies that resulted in adding over $200 million to the state's oil and gas trust fund, and for ensuring that a portion of the interest earned on that windfall was earmarked for the Forever Wild program, for his tireless efforts to preserve Alabama's natural environment and resources for our generation and generations to come, and for his lifetime of public service. James Douglas Martin has been elected to the Alabama Academy of Honor.
Well, like all those that receive this wonderful honor, you feel humbled but grateful for the many people that helped you along life's way. As I look out on this group, I see so many men and women that I've known for so many years and who helped me along that way, and I'm most appreciative. In fact, my best buddy is right here, Hall Thompson. He's getting a little old, but he can still stand. And his wonderful wife, Lucy, and Harry Brock over here, whose father was a partner of mine, and who's been a lifelong friend. And for those who helped me in the Forever Wild program, I'll ever be indebted, because when I first started, Sharon, my secretary, is here, and she said, you know, for 5 years you carried that around in an envelope and said Forever Wild, and everybody thought you were an old crazy old man. Well, I still am a crazy old man, so God bless all of you.
Frank Stitt III. Growing up in Cullman, the son of a surgeon and a mother who loved cooking, for developing a deep sense of his Alabama roots and a strong connection to the land early in childhood, while spending time on his grandparents' farm, a place he loved, for attending Tufts University in Boston and then the University of California at Berkeley, but before realizing that his life's calling was not in the field of philosophy, but in the culinary arts instead, for perfecting his kitchen skills in some of the Bay Area's finest restaurants, where he was mentored by culinary legends, for returning home to his Alabama roots after spending time in France, where he perfected his culinary skills, for opening Highlands Bar and Grill in 1982, the realization of a vision, and one that would put Birmingham on the map as home to world-class dining, for opening 3 or more restaurants in Birmingham soon afterwards, all of them successful in their own right, for being the recipient of numerous culinary awards, among them the prestigious James Beard Award for Best Chef in the Southeast and the Southern Food Alliance Hall of Fame's Lifetime Achievement Award, for his reputation as one of the country's finest chefs, recognition that has landed him as a frequent guest on the Martha Stewart Show, Food Network's Best Of series, the Discovery Channel's Great Chefs, Great Cities, the PBS program Chefs Afield, and Chefs Afield, and Turner South's Off the Menu, and bringing the national spotlight to focus on some of the best Alabama has to offer, and for helping to foster a new admiration and appreciation of the state we all love. Frank Stitt III has been elected to the Alabama Academy of Honor.
Well, my father was rather shocked at my choice of occupations, and I think he would be even more shocked that I would be here today. But from my family and all of our staff, I hope that we can continue to influence people in a good way in Alabama. Thank you very much.
Charles D. McCrary, for being born in Birmingham in 1951 and growing up in Shades Valley, for receiving a degree in mechanical engineering from Auburn University, for a long career with Southern Company and Alabama Power that actually began in 1970, when, as a summer student, he collected water samples on the Coosa River, for earning a Juris Doctor from the Birmingham School of Law and being admitted to the Alabama Bar in 1979, for being named head of Alabama Power's Environmental Compliance Department in 1982, and for the next 19 years holding positions of increasing responsibility within the Southern Company, for being elected president and CEO of Alabama Power in 2001, for his efforts in behalf of economic development, and for serving as chairman of the Economic Development Partnership of Alabama, for serving on the boards of Regions Financial Corporation, Mercedes-Benz, Protective Life, the University of Alabama Health Services Foundation, and Southern Research Institute, for serving as past chairman of the Children's Hospital Board, during which time he helped prepare the hospital to move forward with plans to build a new facility, and for serving as a trustee of the Children First Foundation, for serving as a board member of the Birmingham Museum of Art, as a trustee of Auburn University, as a member of the board of directors of the Alabama Archives and History Foundation, and as a member of the Alabama Engineering Hall of Fame, for his distinguished record at Alabama Power, for his work in promoting economic development and improving the quality of health care for all Alabamians, and for his deep sense of commitment to the betterment of his community and his state. Charles Douglas McCrary has been elected to the Alabama Academy of Honor.
Now you can sit down.
Thank you.
You can't keep it. Governor Riley, members of this great academy and distinguished guests, it's my pleasure, my honor, to thank you on behalf of the class of 2009 for our induction into this academy. You know, the class of 2009 has been quite fortunate, really. They've all been very successful in their own chosen fields. And you and I both recognize that they've had recognition in the past because they've been successful. But this recognition today is particularly meaningful because it comes from our state. It comes from the state of Alabama that we love. We were born in Alabama. We grew up in Alabama. Alabama is where we have the memories of our parents, our grandparents, our schools, our summers, our friends and our neighbors. It's where we have our memories. Alabama is where we raised our children. We're part of Alabama. And Alabama is part of us. You've read the bios, I know, of the people that have been inducted today, and I'm so very proud to be associated with each and every one of them. Yet I do worry. I do worry that what happens 40, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, what happens if they lose my classmates' bios? What's history going to say about the class of 2009? And take Don James, for instance. I mean, here's a man that digs big rocks out of the ground, busts them up, and makes small rocks out of them. How hard can that be? And Angus Cooper, the great maritime man, takes boxes off of a dock, loads them onto a boat, sails across the water, puts the boxes onto a dock. Angus, how hard can that be? And my good friend Jim Martin, the father of Forever Wild. And when people look back, they're going to think about Forever Wild and they're going to say, this is the program where we bought hundreds of thousands of acres of land and did nothing with it. And Frank Stitt, traveling the world, learning how to cook. He travels the world learning how to eat and drink. What are these people going to say? And then you come to me. You know, I'm a fellow that produces and sells a product that you can't see, you can't hear, you can't smell it, you can't taste it, and you certainly don't want to touch it. I worry, Governor, about the selection committee and what the Academy members are going to say 100 years from now. But then I think about it and I quit worrying. Because the class of 2009 knows that it is our association with the members of this academy from which we draw our reputation. We draw our strength and our honor from your deeds. In fact, we draw our strength and our honor from all of Alabama. Alabama is what made us. Alabama is what shaped us. And today, the class of 2009 shares that honor with all Alabamians. 69 years ago, there was an address made before the House of Commons after the Battle of Britain, and Sir Winston Churchill said, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." And today that needs to be turned around. I think it's appropriate for our class, the class of 2009. The quote should be, "Never have so few owed so much to so many." We recognize that we stand on the shoulders of the inductees that came before us. In fact, we stand on many shoulders. Angus Cooper stands on the shoulders of his father and his brother David. We know that Jim Martin stands on the shoulders of Harry Brock, of Hall Thompson, of Ray Scott. Frank Stitt stands on the shoulders of his mother and his father, and even his junior high football coach, Stafford Smith. Don James, he stands on the shoulders of Tom Carruthers, Herb Sklenar, David Matthews, and Joab Thomas. I stand on the shoulders of my mother, my father, my wife, my family, my friends. In fact, we all stand on the shoulders and are indebted to the thousands of men and women that work tirelessly every day to make a difference, without fanfare, without honor, without recognition. These people that work in the organizations that we've had the honor to serve. And it's the people of Alabama. The class of 2009, we trust that our shoulders will be broad enough, will be strong enough to one day reach down and lend a helping hand so that perhaps someone can stand on our shoulders. We live in a great state. We recognize that it's the people of Alabama that have the lion's heart. Today, we had the luck to be called upon to give the lion's roar. Thank you for our induction.
I am looking for a birthday cake, which I want to give to someone in the audience. Where is it? Did someone take it? All right, there it is, right there. Would you give that birthday cake to Mr. Head? The work of this academy is done by the Department of Archives and History. Its superb director, Ed Bridges, is a member of our executive committee who makes sure that things get done, and he will give us some announcements.
As tradition, immediately after the ceremony is over, there will be a reception in the old archives room, which is through this door, up the stairs and down the hallway. For those of you, the stairs, they're about 7 or 8 steps, but they're pretty steep. For those of you who have difficulty with steps, we'll have somebody to meet you back at the door and escort you around the elevators to get you there without having to clear steps. Thanks again to Greg for your help in letting us use this room, Greg. I also want to thank particularly Deborah Wilkins of the archive staff, who really does the work, and a number of wonderful volunteers from our volunteer group who've assisted today, and ask you to join me in thanking them when you see them around. They're wonderful people, and we appreciate them helping us. After the program is over and before the reception, we'd like for the new inductees and Governor Riley, if y'all would come up here for photographs. And finally, I think Governor Brewer has an announcement. Governor Brewer?
Thank you very much, Ed. The Executive Committee of the Academy has asked me to make a presentation to you today, a presentation of a resolution. So if I may, I will read it at this time. Whereas Thomas N. Carruthers has served as chairman of the Alabama Academy of Honor since 2000, and whereas during that time he has worked tirelessly to promote the Academy's mission of honoring outstanding living Alabamians whose accomplishments have brought great credit to the state. And whereas during his tenure as chairman, he has strived to increase the public exposure of the Academy and to build its membership in a way that is inclusive and representative of the range of achievement in our state's population. And whereas he has led the Academy with honor and distinction, enlivened by warmth and wit, and even asking questions on occasion, and to doing so has set a high bar of leadership excellence for all future chairmen. And whereas he has this date announced his intention to relinquish his duties as chairman after the 2009 induction ceremony, though still remaining active on the executive committee. Now, therefore, on behalf of the executive committee, we present this resolution where the members of the Academy do express our deepest gratitude to Thomas N. Carruthers, our mentor and role model, for his dedicated service and outstanding leadership. And Tom, since you're chairman and you can't preside over the presentation of this resolution and the vote on it, I'm going to assume that authority, if I may, and I'm going to ask for the question. Those who favor the adoption of the resolution may indicate so by standing and applauding. And as temporary chair, I declare the resolution adopted.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Tom.
Thank you
And
very
thank
much.
you.
You're nice. We had a deal that there would be none of this 10 years ago when John Patterson turned this over to me. He made it very clear that there would be no fanfare or nothing because at least I know the job is really a great job of great pleasure. Thank all of you very much. John Patterson is not here today because he is recovering. He's getting better. I spoke to him on the telephone Thursday night. He asked to be sure and send to all of you his best regards and deep feelings, and he says he will see us next year. Before we adjourn, I do have an announcement that after this meeting is through, our new chairman will be Kathy Randall. Thank all of you, and we're adjourned. See you in the reception room.